Try. Yeah. Hello everybody, how are you all doing? I am Dr. Padmavati Tungaturthi from Teachconnect. Today we are going to understand what is a competency-based question. First of all, what is a traditional method of question and what's a competency-based question? If we are understanding everyday's assessment, whatever we are doing in the classroom, students are tending to do it very well. But when it comes to the final assessment in the CBSE board, students are unable to score that mark. Where is the problem? The problem is with the preparation of the question. How are we going to prepare the question? We are preparing the question, but suddenly something is happening that the students are unable to comprehend the question, whatever we are working on. That's how we got to definitely understand what is a competency based question. In this 60 minutes, we will let you know, or a little lesser than this 60 minutes, I will let you know actually what is the method of preparing a competency based question. And let me just check if everything is fine. Okay. Therefore, we are coming out of this shocking truth that we are not able to create that competency based question. How are we going to align this competency based question? First of all, what is our traditional method of preparing a question? Hello, for those who have joined late. And what is the traditional method of question? Remember, remembering question and understanding questions are going on in easier questions, and those are lower order thinking skills question. You should be aware of Bloom's taxonomy by now. If you are not aware, please look at the video which I have put up on Bloom's taxonomy. Therefore, now when we are working on competency based question, there is a shift from traditional method of question to competency based question. For that, we need to understand the objectives and what are learning outcomes. How are we going to map the learning outcomes onto the Bloom's taxonomy? For then we can create the competency based question. So from now on, please don't call this as writing a question paper or something. We are trying to look at designing the question paper with blueprint. That is, what is the blueprint which we are working on and how the blueprint will work. This is we are focusing on. Then the designing of a question paper, for everything the learning outcomes is the top reaching point. We got to descend every information from the learning outcome. For that, we need to understand where we find the learning outcomes, where are the learning outcomes available. First of all, what is Bloom's taxonomy? What are the verbs which are associated with Bloom's taxonomy? How are we going to understand the blueprint? What is it we are going to reflect? I sincerely wish that you reflect on every 5 minutes while you are understanding this webinar. 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes, write down one sentence, what is that you have learnt from. Therefore, NEP 2020 demands that 50% of the question paper must be prepared on competency based question. Therefore, we need to have a checklist, right? Are we really preparing questions wherein we can have those competencies, and what are the examples which we can give, and how are we understanding the competency based question? Okay. When we are starting off with Bloom's, we have the levels like remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. From remember and understanding, if you are going to give a question, the verbs which are used, we are going to call it an easier question. The middle order thinking skills are apply questions which are application based only. Now we have analyze, evaluate, and create questions. If the student is able to analyze the question, if the student is able to evaluate, take an opinion, have a judgment, and create a question, create a design, create a method, create a solution for the problem, then we are going to call it as higher order thinking skill question. But competency-based questions, when you are looking at analyze, evaluate, and create, we also need to work on case-based questions, source-based questions, as well as evidence-based questions. Now, if you are going to give a case-based question, source-based question, or an evidence-based question, and the student is going to analyze, evaluate, or create one of the things done, then we are calling this as a competency-based question. It is not difficult for a student to understand what is a competency-based question, or for a teacher to prepare a competency-based question, but it is only the restructuring and understanding. Now, what's a case-based question? Case-based questions are those questions wherein we pick up a scenario and we give. That is, we can create our own scenario, like in our school last year when there was a sports day. That means the sports day may not or may have been occurred. We're going to create a scenario. That is what we call as case-based question. The source-based question is for sure the event must have happened, or if we are going to pick up a story from some other textbook, or if we are going to prepare anything, any short material from anywhere, then we are going to give that as source-based question. Now, what is an evidence-based question? If you pick up right now parallelly, if you are looking at CBSE sample question paper for grade 10, you will definitely understand that there are questions where there are case-based questions, there are source-based questions, wherein we lift up cases from somewhere else where the already written material, maybe we are talking about newspapers or the as resources, or we are talking about a video, because video can't be placed on a question paper. We can convert the content into a script and we can give them. That is a source-based question. Now, when we are talking about evidence-based question, evidence-bases are those things wherein there is a graph must occur. That means the evidence is already, the data is there available. We are going to pick up that data. Like we are going to pick up the data about how much of electricity is being used in different states in India, and what is that power consumption level. If we give such real question, those are called as competency-based question. Out of this, the student is supposed to make a judgment, give his opinion, and we are looking for a voice for them to look at the question. There may be many answers, many different answers also, but we are looking for the probable solutions what the child is going to give an opinion. For this, the context is very important. The clarity in the context is important. What is it you actually want the student to give an opinion on? What is it you want the student to frame a solution for? Why are you asking for a solution? What is that solution you want them to do? That's how a competency-based question needs to have a context from which topic you are preparing, and therefore we also need to have the solution for this. For example, I'll give you something like photosynthesis, which is very easy and everybody, irrespective of the subject, will know about photosynthesis. If at all, if it is a photosynthesis, the traditional questions where we used to learn previously could be, traditional question should be define photosynthesis. This is a simple question. This is how we give. Such a question where it falls under remember and understand is called an easy question, and that is a Bloom's lower order thinking skill question. Now, what happens? The child will definitely give the total answer as to what is a question, how we are having a definition of photosynthesis. And now, if you are giving an application question, that is the middle part of it, and why is photosynthesis important for survival? Now, when we know that when the student is able to understand that oxygen is liberated, given out when photosynthesis occurs, we are taking a cue from the point where oxygen is being given out, and that is required for the survival. That's how the benefits from the application are supposed to be connected to the context. Okay, that's what we call as application question, wherein this, anytime when you give an application question, we got to consider that as average level question. That's how we can talk to the parents also and let them know that any question which is an application level question is called as a middle order thinking skill question, that is considered to be an average level question. Now, for example, if we are working on the same kind of question like photosynthesis, oxygen, people survival, this is the concept, right? Therefore, a forest area was deforested for construction. Analyze how this affects the carbon cycle and you should suggest a solution. Is it going to affect the carbon cycle? The child should understand by now that it's going to affect. Of course, during the classroom, all the briefing must be given to the students. Otherwise, the students cannot understand the application, the benefits, the evaluation, the creating of the concept must be done in the classroom. Other than that, the students cannot write. If at all we don't touch on this carbon footprints in the classroom, or if we don't give them a material to read, then it's difficult for the student to write down such kind of question. Therefore, now if we are going to learn about the learning outcome, now what is the basis for giving this kind of question? Can we prepare a topic from anywhere and can we give a topic randomly to children? No, we can't. We cannot give such kind of random topics to children. We have a CBSE teacher resource booklet wherein there is learning outcome. I'm not a little tech savvy, so I want to place it after the complete webinar. Please look at the description box later. Therefore, we can definitely look at what is a teacher resource booklet. That one we will see that we post it as a link in the description box. That is not authored by me. That is authored by CBSE. That is NCERT published booklet wherein National Education Policy all is come into picture, and the center part of it, that is A intersection B intersection C, is the teacher resource booklet. In that booklet, every class, every grade, there are learning outcomes being published, and those learning outcomes are to be achieved. Now, what happens if we don't achieve these learning outcomes? Learning outcomes, if you are not achieving, means we are falling short of preparing the student for the final grade. Every year the learning outcomes must be achieved by the student. The learning outcomes have to be achieved by the student. That's how. If they don't achieve, therefore, for example, from grade 8, if they are not able to achieve the learning outcomes, then grade 9, by the way, let me explain to you what is achieving a learning outcome. Complete list of learning outcomes given for every subject need to be completed. That is what we call as achieving the learning outcome. We got to achieve those learning outcomes so that the student will be prepared for the next level. Even for SAFL, that is structured assessment for analyzing learning, the SAFL also will have the same kind of learning outcomes must be achieved, which triggers of a proper reading and which triggers of a proper understanding of the question, the foundation literacy and numeracy. Learning outcomes is the Bible for everybody. We need to follow that. Therefore, that booklet, if you are keeping in front of you and preparing and connecting every learning outcome to Bloom. Now, what happens in this learning outcome? One learning outcome may not be finished in one particular session. That is maybe 45 minutes or so. The lesson plan which we are writing, you have to pick up one learning outcome. In that, create specific learning outcomes and see that you write down those learning outcomes and specific learning outcome. Those specific learning outcomes will become the aims for your topic for the day for teaching it. That's how learning outcomes are very important. It is not connecting the textbook to learning outcomes. You have to connect the learning outcomes to the textbook. Whatever book you are using, the ultimate achievement must be done by the learning outcome. Now come on, you can open a learning outcome which is in the learning outcome resource booklet, and from there you have to connect every learning outcome to Bloom's taxonomy. As I have told you, the Bloom's taxonomy will be remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate and create. These are the levels. You must once again remember that. Remember and understand will come under easy questions. Middle order thinking questions should be the application questions, and the higher order thinking skill questions will be analyze, evaluate and create. That is how you need to map the questions to the content. Now, if you are looking at higher order thinking skill questions, these analyze and evaluate and create questions must be clubbed up in one way. Like It is not lower order thinking skill questions are straight questions. Higher order thinking skill questions must be case based, source based, and evidence based question. Otherwise, you cannot pick up such a big story and ask them to write down yes or no. Therefore, you need to have a mapping exercise. Now, come on, open a learning outcome. If at all you are not watching it live, you need to open it. You need to open the learning outcomes booklet, and you need to look at, I'll give a minute of time. You open one learning outcome, and if at all you're opening one learning outcome, then you need to look at which Bloom's level it is being fixed, and which Bloom's level you want to teach the content, and what sort of competency based question you are supposed to prepare. For example, you are picking up one topic. Picking up a topic itself is a little trickish thing. The rest, other than that, just converting one question to another level. Take a question, but though in the R&U level, you can push it up to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create level. It is just easy. As the process goes, as the webinar goes, I just explain to you what is a competency based question and how it can be prepared, how to identify that as an application level question or analyze, evaluate, create question. Therefore, any question wherein you are giving the benefit and asking them to find out the cause of the benefit, that is considered as applied question. For example, if we are taking a small scenario, say for example, when the evaporation, we are going to give a question to the children, write one example of evaporation. Obviously, the students will give and they will write down as evaporation is a process wherein water evaporates into the thin air or something, whatever the textbook definition is, and from there they are going to give an example. My mom dries clothes on the clothesline. On a winter day, the rate of evaporation will be lower, and on the summer day the rate of evaporation is quicker. Therefore, quickly there is the evaporation being happening. Now that means now the students are giving it. If the teacher gives this example and asks them to calculate what is the concept on it, that comes under application question. This is the best and easiest way to remember. That means, see, for example, I'll give another example. Like we want to ask the students to write down the benefits of meditation. Therefore, if at all we want to write, we can give an application question. Give an example of meditation is what we used to ask in the traditional assessment question. That if at all we are asking the student to give an example, the student says that my friend Raju was stressed about examination. Therefore, he was trying to meditate, go into meditation, and he was trying to understand what is meditation, and those are the benefits are he de-stress himself. Now, if a teacher gives this example and asks what is the benefit of meditation, what is this process benefit of meditation, how could he de-stress himself, how could he achieve the calmness, therefore the student will write down that meditation is something wherein you will calm down your process or something like that, the cooling, the agonizing won't be there or something like that. That's how when you give the benefit and ask the student to write the concept, that is what we call as application question. For whenever you write an analyzing question, say for example, if you are giving an analysis question, you're going to separate the concept into various parts and attach the learning to it. That is what is analysis. For example, if we are having all a clubbed up, say wet waste and dry waste, a laundry list of wet waste and dry waste. Therefore, we can ask the students to separate wet waste and dry waste. They are analyzing what is wet waste and dry waste. That means in the classroom, they must have learned what is wet waste and what is dry waste, and here they are learning what is a wet waste. Therefore, how are they going to separate? How is wet waste used? How is dry waste used? The recycling concepts come into picture. This is how a conceptual based question can be prepared. You can either create a case, or you can either create a source, or you can either ask the students to prepare that evidence based question. Just as you have a flyer coming out, say for example, you give that flyer in the newspaper and ask them to decode the information about it. Teachers in English will love this kind of example, that they want to decode whatever is there in the flyer, poster, digital you will get the posters, or you have digi posters or something like that. For such kind of separation, evaluation and creating questions are those questions wherein the student is going to create a solution. For example, we know a few benefits of wastewater management. What is that novel way of giving that wastewater management is what we got to create, or we're asking the students to draw the content. Therefore, if they're drawing a picture, they're going to create something very new. This is what we call as creating. Now, the teachers are also creating the question paper. The question must be there, but the teachers are compiling them in a novel way, trying to understand them in a novel way. That's how the competency-based question paper can be prepared. Therefore, there is a Bloom's taxonomy verb list also. Later in the chat box, I would like to paste that Bloom's taxonomy list that you can find out, and you can look at the verb and you can identify whether it falls under apply, analyze, evaluate and create level. Therefore, majorly for you, two important things are there to learn. First one is, what is a competency-based question? Definitions of case-based, source-based and evidence-based questions. Which falls under which category? That is one sort of thing which is available. And the next thing can be Bloom's taxonomy. If you cannot map the learning outcome to the Bloom's taxonomy, first better learn that. If you are able to learn, otherwise you can call my office number 93982-20032. That number 93982-20032. If at all, let me see if I can check it. Yeah. Okay, whatever. Okay, 93982-20032. We can call that number and you can ask for my help. I will definitely be available. And that's how the analyze, evaluate and create questions can be prepared. For example, I'll ask you a small question. The learning outcome says, explain the interdependence of plants and animals. It is just an apply question. Explain the interdependence of plants and animals. Now, if you want to give a competency-based question, I want to take up a small case saying that Ria noticed fewer bees visiting flowers in her garden. Analyze how this change may affect fruit production and suggest two solutions. Two solutions you are supposed to suggest. You are going to give very specifically only two solutions, because if the child knows many solutions, child can keep on writing the solution. That's very tough for the child, because the child will be agonized. Therefore, now you can pause the video, and if at all you are watching it later, you have to pause the video and you got to learn to take up a learning outcome, and you got to take up the Bloom's taxonomy to which level you are watching, which level you are mapping it, and write a question and justify. You have to, if at all you want to go to a competency based question, you should definitely go into case based, source based as well as evidence based question. Without that, it is very difficult. Now, what's a blueprint? How many questions are to be prepared for a blueprint? What is the real skeleton work of a blueprint? This is needed for student, because if at all you are preparing a blueprint that will work exactly with like a skeleton, that will take up in the next week, because that is a little a deeper topic to go, and all cannot go in one way or at a one go. Therefore, first finish off looking at learning outcome, then looking at Bloom. Wait for next week. I'll try to create one more video, or this live also will work well. That's how you can work on competency based question. Now, how to create that blueprint, that will postpone until next week. Please pause this video, look at this video, watch this video again and again, and every 5 minutes stop my video and then write down what is that you have learned. This is how we can frame with clarity, with enough clarity. We can prepare the context, clarity, evidence case based and source based question. That's how we will complete the competency based question. This forms 50% of the question paper. The rest of the 50% is very easy, like 20% for the remember and understand, and 30% for the application for question. If all you have any doubt, please write that doubt in the chat box. I'll definitely be there for you to handhold. Thanks for watching and namaste. I am Dr. Padmavati Tungaturthi from Teachconnect. This is a small part of the information for competency based question. Thank you so much.